Hi, and welcome to the Skincarma Pod. I'm Carmine, the creator and voice of the Skincarma blog. With more than 25 years in beauty as a brand builder, copywriter, and skincare junkie, I'm putting my product wisdom and expertise to work demystifying skincare. Today on the Skincarma Pod, I'm welcoming to the podcast Annie Meyer, co founder of Untoxicated allergen-free skincare. If you caught my series of blog articles several weeks ago on creating the perfect AM and PM skincare routines, you may recall that my moisturizer of choice was Untoxicated's Moisture Boost Hydrating Cream. Quite simply, it's one of the best and most affordable face creams for all skin types, but particularly highly sensitive skins. Untoxicated was founded just 2 years ago by industry veteran Annie Meyer and Dr. Martin Smith, an allergist at the Cleveland Clinic. The brand was created to address the needs of sensitive skin. It may seem at first like a niche market, like just sensitive skin, but as crazy as it sounds, 70% of consumers identify with having sensitive skin. The brand sought not only to reach that consumer through the mass market channel, but to bring actual innovation with products formulated without allergens. In fact, the Intoxicated range, currently 4 products, is free of the most common allergens known to trigger 99% of adverse skin reactions. The skincare market leaders for sensitive skin can't say that. CeraVe can't say that. Cetaphil can't say that. Vanicream can't say that. But Intoxicated can. I've been obsessed with the genius behind this disruption and the way Untoxicated has boldly faced down the big guys. It's no small feat to go up against CeraVe. After all, they can even afford Super Bowl commercials. But Annie and Dr. Smith identified a white space in the skincare marketplace and they sought to fill it. Today, I'm excited to welcome Annie to the podcast and to chat about how Untoxicated is breaking through the big beauty clutter. Annie's got 2 decades of experience as a consumer brand builder, including roles leading some of the most well-known brands, among them Vaseline, Axe for Men, and Kettle One Vodka. Next week, I'll have the opportunity to talk to Dr. Smith about skincare ingredients, Untoxicated's formulations, and the unique perspective of an allergist in the beauty space. But first, let's talk to Annie. Annie, hi.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to have you on. I have been wanting to do something like this with you and Dr. Smith for a while. I think it's is it safe to say that I'm a day one fan of the brand?
It's safe to say that. Less safe is the side of me you bring out, which is just the unfiltered, free speaking, like all the parts of you I love that could either make for a really interesting podcast or like a lot of, post editing. So
That's
yeah.
the Italian connection.
Yeah.
It's the Italian connection. We're going to bring out the Sicilian in each other.
Oh, buckle up.
Oh my God. Buckle up, folks. Anyway, really, welcome to the Skincarma Pod. This is so great. I'm excited to talk to you about, what you're bringing to the consumer marketplace. I talked in the intro about how Untoxicated is disrupting the marketplace for sensitive skin and, skincare more broadly, the mass market. And there are really entrenched players in there. I mean, really entrenched. So it was bold and daring,
Yeah.
I would say. And so I just want to jump right in and hear, how this all came to being and, who you are and
Yeah.
how you got to that point.
Sure. I'll be the first to say I'm an accidental founder. I was
Ah,
not ever someone that came into this thinking, I need to start my own thing. As we've talked about a number of times, Carmine, like we both have shared backgrounds in terms of traditional beauty, traditional consumer, great places to like learn a lot just around, best in class marketing and the way things work, especially several decades ago before there were a lot more of kind of room for these incumbents. But what was happening very fortuitously is I was hitting a place in my like mid 30s, which I've now realized is quite common, where despite working on, for decades in beauty, I joke that my first and longest employer was Ulta Beauty at retail in high school and college. But I had,
Oh my God.
yeah. And so if you ever want to talk to me about like facing lipsticks, I still have like PTSD from that. But, you know, decades of putting stuff, on my body, love exploration, love trying products. I'm with you, like just kindred spirit. My skin started to react to that. And
Mm,
I started to experience what I now know is, mild eczema, all of these sensitive skin conditions for the first time. And I was left scratching my head to say, what's driving this? I don't get it. And as someone who'd spent decades in beauty, kind of graduated from my Ulta retail days to work at, Unilever, running several of their personal care businesses, wellness companies, I was actually struggling to find answers as to, I kind of knew what was going on with my skin, but not what was driving it. And this was months on months. And I became so frustrated that I'm like, time out. If I'm someone that's like just by my nature curious, I become like, a dog on a bone if I can't figure something out. And technically, I'm a trained, I don't want to say beauty expert, but on the business side of things. And I can't find good solutions to help address and get my skin needs under control. What does that mean for the average person? And that was kind of tucked, that frustration, and that thought was kind of tucked away as I was continuing my day job. And very fortuitously, I got connected through a mutual friend with my co-founder, Dr. Smith. I'll call him Martin for all intents and purposes here,
sure.
who had said to me, there's a medical doctor at the Cleveland Clinic that's working on something really interesting in skincare. I think you should chat with him, just because I know you nerd out on like brand strategy and giving your days on Vaseline. You know quite about this. Like maybe you could help him. And the short of it is, Martin was essentially working on first of its kind skincare, driven by what he was seeing in his patients, which were effectively me, which are the
Mm,
people that were coming in and saying, I don't get it. I'm using the things that my doctor's telling me to use. And in a lot of situations, my sensitive skin, my redness, my irritation, my rashes, my flaking, all of those signs and symptoms are in a lot of cases not getting better and often getting worse. And Martin basically started to kind of turn around all of these products and realize that while they are, better than average, it's not like putting Bath and Body Works on your
yeah.
face. There's
Yeah.
still a lot, since they've been created 4 decades ago, that's been scientifically proven over and over again to inflame and irritate skin. And so for me, that was a little bit of like this like kismet moment where, something I had been struggling with in real time as a consumer came to the forefront of my professional life, so to speak, when I got connected with a partner who saw this from the clinical side and was working on it. And so I didn't quit my job that day, but after a course of another of months and, working together, the rest is kind of history 3 years and change later.
Right.
Bags increase under my eyes, and here
Yeah.
we are. Yeah.
Yeah. And so Untoxicated is born,
Hmm.
and the brand is in a very crowded space. And that just kind of disruption or attempt at disruption is really what fascinates me. And I think what really stood out to me when I was first introduced to the brand, I don't honestly even remember when that was, but it was that this formula was so simple that it couldn't
Yeah.
help but be effective.
Hmm.
All of the nonsense was gone,
Yeah.
and it was just delivering, whether it was the cleanser or the moisturizing cream initially, it was just delivering what your skin needs and nothing more.
Yeah.
And it was so fascinating to me. And I do my share, and I think this, of bashing the beauty industry and these
Yeah.
entrenched brands who don't think they should bother upgrading their formulas,
Yeah.
because why mess with something that's working.
Totally.
And I worked in house at L'Oreal, and to your point, you learn a lot about how to do business,
Hmm.
and a lot about the beauty business, and they're incredible educators, but they're also very risk averse. I think the best example of that in my mind is the SkinCeuticals CE Ferulic.
Hmm.
That's that brand's bread and butter.
Yep.
It's got to be 60-70% of the business, and they're terrified to touch it. And the
Right.
product is 20 years old,
Right.
and it's filled with allergens. And, there's a version of it in Europe that's not. And, they're terrified to bring that version here because they can't mess with something that the consumer loves.
Right.
And so you're kind of up against this concept of the consumer loving their products. I think the other thing that I'm so fascinated about is the idea that 70% of consumers believe that their skin is sensitive, and their skin may not be sensitive, but it's certainly sensitized.
Exactly.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we've all been. I mean, God knows I'm a product junkie, and
Yeah. Yeah.
I can sensitize my skin pretty darn quickly. So you identified this space that Untoxicated could fit in. Dr. Smith Martin, had begun work on these formulas, and then what was the mission from there?
Yeah. So you hit the nail on the head in terms of, the vast majority of us have sensitive skin or have experienced skin sensitivity in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah,
And if you look back 2 decades, that was like 5 out of 10 people. 20 years later, that's jumped to 20%. And if we start to look at Gen Z and younger, that's more like 85. So it's a massive problem. It's growing quickly. It's here to stay, unfortunately. And, people are like, well, how can that be? Like, well, I live in Chicago. I know you live in New York. Like, you look in these cities, we're exposed to more in our environments, pollution, other things. We're putting more stuff in our bodies, advertently, inadvertently. We know there's, a gut skin connection.
yeah,
And the average American woman puts, I think, over 500 chemicals on her skin every day. And a lot of times people don't believe me. I'm like, next time you're washing hands, turn around your soap. There's 32 ingredients in it. You can get to
yeah,
500 really quickly. And so I think for us, we have the benefit of it being something that's increasingly coming to the conscious of people as it becomes a problem, unfortunately. And our perspective is we're on a mission to be accessible to the 7 or 8 out of 10 people who need us whenever they need us. And, as a mass brand, you hit on it, that's easier said than done, puts a
yeah,
lot of pressure on our margins and our business model. We get this question all the time from investors. Why don't you, why don't you charge more money for this product? There's nothing like it. And our answer is, why would we create something that 2 out of 10 people can afford when 7 out of 10 people need it? So, our goal is really to empower people, which I believe is the future of skincare, is more empowerment. I believe it's the future of medicine, with not only better solutions, but more information, like in a way that they can then take that and use that elsewhere, right? It's kind of teaching people to fish, not just the highfalutin clinical or medical skincare on high,
hmm
paternalistically giving guidance, but how do we educate and inform people in a way that teaches them how to take better care of themselves? Because I grew up in the 90s, Stridex pads were everything. That's the worst thing you could, right?
the
People,
worst thing you could put on your face.
people need to unlearn and relearn
Yeah,
proper health for their skin. And we want to try to help them do that, especially if they're sensitive, because there's less margin for error in terms of what their skin will handle and tolerate.
for sure. It is amazing what horrible skincare habits I had growing up.
And
And
nutrition, like it was like tab and like
nutrition
no fat anything. Yeah, I've had to relearn the whole gamut.
and pizza.
Well,
I
I'm
mean,
Italian. I'm never giving that up.
never, it's not happening.
80/20, Carmine. We preach that as it relates to our skincare too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. So
Oh my, oh my. So you get to this point now where all of these consumers are
yeah,
either sensitive or sensitized.
right.
You alluded to the younger customer. Are you
Yeah.
finding that customer is taking better care of their skin than we did when we were kids?
Generally speaking, yes. Now, I go back and forth on this. I love your perspective. I have friends who have kids that are a little bit older. We're talking the tweens that, we're
Mm,
talking a lot about the things they're getting into skincare wise and they maybe shouldn't. Part of me says, I don't know. I was putting like Bonnie Bell glitter, whatever, all over my face. Like, I think there's always going to be, a new flavor of it that just looks different generationally. But I think that, growing up, remember when SPF became a thing? Like it
Yeah.
wasn't like one of my favorite comedians, Neil Brennan, jokes about this. Like it wasn't a thing up until like the 80s. And so I think there's just a lot more education and information. One, two, it's much more accessible. There's two sides to that, but I think in general, it creates a dynamic and environment where younger generations are more capable of taking care of their skin younger, whether they're doing it or they have, some type of guide in their life, whether it's a parent, otherwise, they're kind of helping them earlier on. But I think like the thing that we really are working to toe the line on is when you chat with people a lot about these, we say we're kind of a mass clinical skincare brand. So by that, we mean we don't play in clean. We're all about what is the scientific data and the medical community say is safe and effective for skin, especially sensitive. My co-founder, Dr. Martin Smith, is a medical doctor. So that's really where our credentialing kind of comes from and our view to product development. But there's still a lot of trust inherent in these brands. So very few people I've spoken to have said, you're going to have to pry my jar of CeraVe from my cold, lifeless body. There's not a lot
Yeah.
of loyalty, but there's a lot of, I think, well, it's working enough and my doctor recommends it, and
Right.
therefore it's probably good enough. There is a portion of the population that is so sensitive that they can't use those products, and they've been raising their hands and the first to adopt us with very little education or information. But I think as we continue to grow, we've been trying to toe the line of not blowing the lid off the whole industry and creating more mistrust at a time when it's already at an all-time high, but trying to present the facts in a kind of credible way and allowing people to kind of decide for themselves if it's right for them based on, what we put in our products and some of these other more like fact-based things versus claims, so to speak.
Yeah. And so do you find that your consumer is connecting with you on that educational level? Like they're interested in that from you? Do they want to know like what's happening in skincare more broadly? Or are they just like, I trust you guys. I understand
Yeah,
your message. The allergen thing makes complete sense to me. We're even more sensitive. I don't mean physically sensitive, but sensitive um, intellectually, I
sure.
guess. And
Yes.
so are you finding the consumer is connecting with you on that?
We are. And I don't think we've found the full bounds of it yet either, which is really exciting. I think in our earliest days, we've been in the market for, as of next month, 2 years, really been organic. So we've not been spending a lot of money behind paid advertising or other things. But in our earliest days, we've really tried to stick to like, what is our core identity? And it's a medical doctor who specializes in skin, but through the lens of allergy. So eczema,
Mm,
dermatitis, and really kind of going at things from that lens. Because if you don't have trust and credibility, well, you don't have a product that works, right? And a resonant
right.
proposition, but
Yeah.
inherent in that is really trust. And so we've really started there and started to kind of expand outward and test some different things. I think what we're really excited about is people are buying into the idea of Untoxicated, which is just there's a lot we're putting on our bodies that maybe we're doing so intentionally, maybe we're doing so inadvertently, that's undermining our overall health and well-being. And so some of our top performing content, it's a series called like Bad Better Best, where Martin
Hmm.
will get on the camera and just say, okay, laundry detergents, let's talk about what the best and the worst are for sensitive skin, let's talk about vitamin C serum. So I think we are getting a lot of license because I think there's a lot of appetite and desire for people to be thinking about this kind of idea of less on your skin can actually be more,
Yeah.
especially within the sweet spot of sensitive skin for sure.
Yeah.
And there are very few brands, I would argue, if any at all, that are really speaking squarely and exclusively to this sensitive skin community.
Yeah. Completely agree with that. There's a huge need for it, and I love the authenticity behind it. And you're very straightforward about the education, and it's almost in a matter of fact fashion, and that's what I really really gravitate to.
Mm.
And it's really a great differentiator. And so we're talking about the relationship you're building with the consumer,
Mhm.
and how do you see that evolving as you move forward, because that's really the secret sauce.
Yeah. That's a great question. I think to your point about it being the secret sauce, we just place so much emphasis on just being connected with our community. and really going to them for honestly as much as we can to get their perspective, right? Whether it's, hey, is this type of language helpful, or just
Mm,
everything from big to small. And we found that they've really responded to that. Like, people like to have opinions, they like to be heard, especially from businesses. And so I think for us, it's continuing to find, or I guess prioritize, keeping that community at the center of what we're doing and not losing sight of that, right? And the like armchair fallacy of like, we think, I think I know the answer because I have sensitive skin, or I think it's really keeping them at the center of what we do, not just in ethos but in practice. Every
yeah.
product we've launched, we've done multiple trials before and after, like just little things that seem so obvious, but when you're also a small brand that's bootstrapped, looking to move really quickly in a dynamic market, that's a lot easier said than done in many instances. So I think it's just continuing to find the ways to make sure their voices and their feedback are heard. I mean, I've got like a 20 tab Excel tracker that shows you what kind of type A nerd I am. Every piece of feedback I've gotten from a consumer, whether it's customer service, email, social comments, that all goes into the tracker. So like even
Wow.
that, like just making sure that we are listening to and like mining all of the perspective we're getting.
And let's we only touched briefly on your experience. Like,
Yeah.
you've built some and led some really notable brands, like Vaseline for
Yeah.
one. And you know how much I love Vaseline. And if you have connections at Vaseline, I need you to tell them to reach out to me, because I
I
think
will. I will.
we
Yeah.
have we have work to do. Um And so, what's it like in
Yeah.
comparison, running a brand like Vaseline,
Yeah.
and, with all of those resources,
Hmm.
and doing this now? Because when you run a brand like Vaseline, you're already established.
Yeah.
You have name recognition, you have, trust from consumers, you have
Yeah.
intense loyalty, right? There's
Yeah.
consumers that won't use anything else. And so,
Yep.
what's that like? Is it a shock? I mean, I'm obviously you're in
Yeah.
it now and it's been a couple years, but initially,
Oh, absolutely. I think that's one of the biggest fallacies that people tend to have looking at my background and being like, you've been doing this across the growth curve for 20 years. Um, I understand this. I joke, I can sell the pants off of deodorant to Walmart, which is very different than starting a day one ground up business, right? And so
yeah.
there's a huge difference in skill set and mindset for sure. A lot of the activities are the same and the principles underpinning them. You just have, you have fewer resources, more prioritization, and a little bit higher risk to getting there, right? And I think as I've been in this role, there have been a few things that I think have kind of been well served. So I think one is just agility and adaptability, right? Like needing to flex depending on what's going on in the business, which is just you don't have these 18-month IBP planning cycles, long-term horizons, right? You kind of need to respond to whether it's the fire or the opportunity that's in front of you. So it's less routinized, a lot more kind of agile and wearing hats. I think two
Mm,
is leading by influence, like both internally, but with consumers. We're working with smaller agencies. I can't give you a $2 million a year remit because my ad budget isn't $100 million. And oftentimes I'm probably your smallest client. So how do I become the account you want to work on and want to overinvest in? And then I'd say three is like underpinning all of this is kind of the ethos of we can't outspend, so how do we outthink? How do we find people that believe in what we're doing? Like you did, literally, like you were like our day one follower who believe in what we're doing and are willing to help support us, whether it's seize opportunity, right? Or using some of these big brand playbooks, frankly, against them. What are the
mm.
things, having worked at those big brands, I know that we're thinking about doing? Could we look at that, tear that book apart, and say what's working for us that we can leverage? And what would they never do that we could leverage? And so I think it's a lot of just like curating the right community around you that are going to be those champions and allies. And then saying, how do we outthink and outmaneuver? Just knowing if we're spending dollar on dollar, it's going to be a losing game.
Yeah. Yeah, completely. And so, where do you see the brand going from here? I mean, you've launched 4 products. They're
Yep.
phenomenal. I have both of them. It's starting to warm up, although we are back into a cold spell, um, which stuns me.
Snowed in
Um,
Chicago yesterday.
yeah, like what? Like I'm ready to shift to my
Yeah.
Untoxicated lotion
Yeah.
from my Untoxicated cream. And
Yeah.
so where do you see things going from here? Because it's easy to get tripped up, I think. And especially if you're one of those big entrenched brands.
Yeah.
But you're not. You're nimble. And I'm curious how, Untoxicated looks in a year, 2 years.
Yeah. So, going back to just our mission of just creating accessible solutions that empower, the 7 to 10 of us with sensitive skin. If we look down the line, our goal is to ultimately be available anywhere someone would need us when they need us. And so we'd
Hmm.
love to find ourselves in the Targets, the Ultas of the world if we're talking mass distribution. But
Hmm.
I think looking back from that, we're really focused on how do we continue to build a vibrant community, a growing portfolio on Amazon and on our website or Shopify site, which is where we're available now. So I think a big part of kind of where we're going would be driven by that. And one would be continuing to find ways to engage with, connect with consumers, build our audience, right? Like our evangelists for the brand,
Yeah.
whether it's partnerships or other things. And then another part of it is really product development. And we're in such an early stage, to your point, we have 4 SKUs. I think the cream is going to be one of our heroes forever, but I would argue there's some other things we've got in the hopper that could very well become a hero. We're not really kind of saturated there in terms of full assortment. I remember as an Axe, we had like 17 variants of a deodorant on a shelf, right?
Yes.
So that being said, I think also just really smart and intentional product innovation that's going to serve our current consumer, build out and round out their skincare routine in our portfolio in an incremental way, and then hopefully, attract kind of new people into the portfolio. And at the center of that, I spend a lot of time in product development. It's kind of the overlapping Venn diagram of what do we represent as a brand? What are our consumers asking for? And what would kind of work well for us at retail as we scale there? Because let's say we come up, it's like a laundry detergent. That's great, but it's going to be one SKU in a separate aisle with a separate buyer in the store, right? So as we
Right.
think about growing, we've got a couple innovations in the hopper that I'm super excited about that our audience has been jumping up and down about that I think are going to do a really nice job of continuing to kind of help build our brand, expand our presence, and support all of the kind of community building and marketing work we're doing. But I think like the summary of that, Carmine, should be like, we're trying to be really thoughtful and intentional versus getting out over our skis, launching a million things, doing a million things. Because I've also been on brands where we've done too much too quickly and then you don't nail the fundamentals. And so I think we're trying to be really intentional and strategic with kind of incremental forward progress. A SKU this spring is coming out, another new product in the fall, and then probably another 2 next year if it makes sense, supported with these kind of incremental investments behind the business. Did that answer
Exciting.
your
I can't
question?
wait. Absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah. Oh, you got me really excited about that.
We're very excited. I would say, like in no particular order. Like if I can share, we're working on a really exciting, I think, first of its kind innovation that is kind of like a patch for the skin. I'll share more for you when we're offline, but I
Yep.
think we're super excited about that. We think it'll be huge in the medical community in particular, which we
Hmm.
know are important gatekeepers for highly sensitive audience, eczema, dermatitis, etc. We're looking at like a thicker, occlusive, kind of like a healing balm. So lips, cuticles, going back to the Vaseline days, we get asked for a lot of that cracking hands and feet, especially in winter or if you do have diabetic or eczema prone skin.
Yeah.
Body wash is actually one of our top requests. People are like, there is so much crap still in body wash. I'm like, I get it. Without,
Yeah, it's true.
pot
Yeah.
calling kettle, like if we look at, some of the brands I've been around, like I know what's in that. So
Yeah.
looking to do that because people are like, eczema doesn't stop at my face.
Yeah.
And then we're working on an SPF and there's no timing for that yet. But as we know, that one is so critical and such a problem for people with sensitive skin in particular. And not only am I sensitive, but I have really dark skin. And so I've got the white cast issues because I can only use mineral. So I think it'll take us a while, even though we've, started formula development, no timing yet, but that's kind of near in some of the things we're looking at.
Yeah. Well, sunscreen is the toughest nut to crack.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. And it's so crucial to get that right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So we'll be giving you a call as we're on
I'm here. I
as
need
we're
to
in
be a
formula, I'm sure it's like 30, 35, 36. But yeah, we'd love to pull you into that
yeah,
as we
I'll
keep moving
test
ahead.
all 36 of them if you need me to. Annie, this has been amazing. I really
Yeah.
appreciate it. It's been such a great conversation. I really want to express my gratitude for your support, on Skin Karma. I love collaborating with you guys, and I'm so excited to see where the brand is headed.
Thank you. And
Anything you need from me, you have it.
no, thank you. And Carmen, I'd say the same back to you. I think we connected so early on because
Yeah.
who you are as a person in terms of demystifying things, straight talking, making information accessible, and frankly, calling BS where it's needed, I think is so aligned not only with who I am as a person, but the brand we're building in Untoxicated. And so I think we feel so fortunate we found an ally. And please keep doing your thing. And yeah, we'll both succeed together.
You got it. Thanks, Annie.
Perfect.
Ciao. Okay, that was dope. I hope you enjoyed it. Like, honestly, I'm so intrigued by how this brand is disrupting big beauty. And I'm just super intrigued and fascinated by what Intoxicated has been able to do. So I hope you enjoyed the conversation with Annie. Again, in a week, I will be having a conversation with her co-founder, Dr. Martin Smith, and we will get more into this concept of allergies and allergens in skincare and how he developed formulas that are free of those triggers. So be on the lookout for that. All right. Thank you for listening to the Skin Karma Pod. Find more insights, real talk, and reviews of my favorite skincare products on the Skin Karma blog at skinkarma.com. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please rate and review this episode. It helps me to reach more listeners. Ciao.